NEWS.MC on Monaco Info is brought to you by Monaco Legend Properties. Our exclusive interview with the personalities making the Principality.
My name is Mark Mead Baillie. I'm the founder and co-director of deMeadville here in Monaco. I'm from San Francisco, California. I'm from a media family. My father was involved in sports media in San Francisco, and his father was Hugh Baillie, who was the chairman and president of the United Press back in the war days. And he interviewed some very significant people whose names I shan't share, but he does have a Wikipedia page. I started in school in San Francisco in the public school system. And when I became 9 years old, my parents wanted to take me out of the public school system and put me in a private school. So I went to a school, an Episcopal school, called Cathedral School for Boys in San Francisco. And this was a good stepping stone because it enabled me at a young age to get a good education such that I could go to boarding school. That was another stepping stone to get into a great university, the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. And I graduated from there with a degree in business because my interest was focused towards economics. And I ended up being a banker. I went to work for a little bit at the BNP in San Francisco, worked there for a couple years, and then went to get my master's in business from Golden Gate University, which is a very nice educational facility in San Francisco. I came out of there, went to work for Barclays as a corporate analyst, again in San Francisco, and moved on from there and ended up at Societe Generale, and that is how my financial course evolved. In about 1959, 1960, 1961, I was a little boy, and we had a television in our house in San Francisco. And I think everybody probably says the same story. The first thing they learned about Monaco was the Formula One race. There was no cable TV yet. There was no satellite anything. One day I'm watching this, and I'm looking at this automobile race, and they said, the way the Americans say it, it's the Grand Prix of Monaco, which I thought was very cute. But I did not know where Monaco was. I thought it was an island in the middle of this Mediterranean or near Spain or something. Then some more years go by, and a film comes out in 1966, directed by John Frankenheimer, called Grand Prix, starring Yves Montand, Eva Marie Saint, James Garner. And a friend of mine, who was a junior race car driver, said, we have to go to the movies, you have to see this movie. And it was in CinemaScope on a widescreen in downtown San Francisco, and the first 30 minutes are all Monaco in color with cameras mounted on the cars. This had never happened before, and I watched this and I said, one day I'm gonna go to this place. So the day comes to go to Europe. It's the typical American family vacation. The mom, the dad. I said, there's this place called Monaco, can we go there? Well, I don't know. Come on, let's go to Monaco. So we came to Monaco in 1979. We went to stay in the Loews Hotel, which today is the Fairmont. We were supposed to stay for some 3 nights. We got here and I said, Mom, I want to stay here for the rest of the vacation. I don't want to go to Cannes. I don't want to go to Paris. I want to stay in Monaco. This place is amazing. And she said to me, we cannot afford to stay in this hotel every night. It costs too much money. So she goes out, does not speak a word of French, and she goes to a place that many people in Monaco know called the Château d'Azur, which is 44 Boulevard d'Italie, because they have short-term rentals. You can rent a place for a week. So that's what we did, and it was much less expensive than staying in the Loews Hotel. And during this period, I got to go to the Monte Carlo Country Club and play some tennis with an Italian man they set me up with. Spoke no English. We had a great time. My mother's sitting in the stands watching, and after we played, I came up and I said, Mom, one day I'm gonna move to Monaco and join this club. And I did. Over the 1980s and the 1990s, I visited Monaco frequently. I would always vacation here. People thought I was crazy. They say, why don't you go anywhere else? I say, I love Monaco. Every time I go there, I meet more people. My networking was expanding. It got to a point about 1987 where I was sending more Christmas cards to people in Monaco than I was in the United States. That's how much it had taken hold of me. So when did I actually move? I often tell people I moved here about 3 times. In 1990, I went into the hospital in San Francisco for a lower back operation. And this is in the days before they had arthroscopic surgical techniques. So the doctor said to me, most people will be in the hospital for this for 7 nights. So I'm lying in the hospital each night. And it was then that I decided I really would like to move to Monaco. I don't want to become elderly and still be here and say, if only I had moved to Monaco. So that's when I decided I wanted to live here. The following year, in 1991, I came here job hunting, and I was offered a position at Barclays Bank in Monte Carlo. It did not follow through because the bank went on a hiring freeze. I came back in 1992 and interviewed with 6 different financial entities. A lot of promises, but I couldn't get anything. I came back again in 1993 and with my CV and just went all over Monaco. And I decided at that point, the only way I could move here is of my own accord, working for myself. So I went back to San Francisco and started doing my own self-employment, financial, analytical work. And in those days, my parents were getting very elderly and I was taking care of them. I really didn't get back here till about 2017. And 2017 was a pivotal year for me to come here. I was introduced by a dear friend to a man whose name is Gaurav Sotania, who's the founder and director of Challenger Stone for some 25 years here in Monaco. And my friend said, you need to meet this guy. He does the same thing you do. And following that, I came back a year later and we had a formal meeting in the Café de Paris. And we went through my website and Gaurav Sotania looks at me and he says, you do all this website financial work. This is great work, but you don't charge anybody. You don't have any subscribers. And I said, no, I just do it because I like to do it. And he says, let's form a Monaco company and we're gonna monetize what you do. 2 large blockages occurred. The first was COVID. I was still living in San Francisco. I was preparing to move here. I had to get my long stay visa via France for Monaco, and everything shut down. My best friends in San Francisco had a going away party for me around the 16th of March, and 4 days later, everything stopped. I couldn't get the visa. I was booked on a flight from San Francisco to Paris. I had to cancel my reservation. The flight went, this is very funny, the air traffic pattern out of San Francisco International Airport went right by our home, and I made a video of the Air France flight upon which I was supposed to be flying over my house, muttering, I was supposed to be on that plane. At mid-year in 2020, and COVID had just shut everything, of course, my house went on the market for sale in San Francisco. I still couldn't get my visa, so I moved to San Diego and lived with very close friends there. And I was able to start the visa process. And in December of 2020, the doorbell rang in San Diego, and it was the Federal Express man, and he had my passport with the visa. So I immediately said, I'm leaving. The first flight I could get, which was from Los Angeles to Paris, was on Christmas Eve. I arrived in Paris on Christmas Day, 2020, transferred to Nice, and here I was. And it was my Christmas present, my arrival in Monaco. Let me explain to you what deMeadville is. It's a website that presents financial analytics on what to me are the most important markets. It stems back to when the internet first came around, and I always like to joke that Al Gore, who was the vice president of the United States in those days, he takes credit for inventing the internet. But in those early days of the internet, there were chat rooms. And people who were involved in trading securities and trading futures markets would go in these chat rooms and they would talk, we should buy the S&P, we should sell oil, we should do this. And what I learned from that was they all used the same kind of analysis. So I would take this analysis and I would test it rigorously. And what I found was it didn't always work. So deMeadville came about by my deciding I have to build an analytical system that is different than what everybody else used, that is reliable. I developed these analytics for deMeadville, and they are unique. You won't find my analytics, to my knowledge, on any website anywhere in the world. We all have the same data. I mean, you have the bond market, you've got the euro, the price opens, it has a high, it has a low, it has a close. But it's how you take that data, historically analyze it, and present it in a different graphical form than anybody has ever seen. And when you look at it this way, you'll say, wow, that makes sense. I've never seen the market look like this through this methodology. So that's what deMeadville is. I do have a little bit of fun with AI in a bit of a jovial way, because I call AI assembled inaccuracy, because it's not always right. And I'll give you my quintessential favorite example. I calculate in real time, when the markets are open, the price-earnings ratio of the S&P 500, which is the most important financial index in the world. It's extremely high right now. And we took the proper formula and we put it into AI to see what it would say. And it got the answer wrong, and it actually said, we're not really able to perform the math correctly to do this. So that's why I will joke about AI and call it assembled inaccuracy. But obviously, it's becoming a critical part of life and business going forward, and we need to respect it. The beginning of deMeadville began with a product I call BEGOS, B-E-G-O-S, BEGOS, and it stands for Bond, Euro, Gold, Oil, S&P 500. And this came about because in my early days as a futures trader, we were trading the S&P 500 futures, and we wanted a way to determine if the S&P was heading in the right direction or if it was overvalued or undervalued. And we say, well, if we can use those four markets to determine the value of the S&P 500, then we can use any combination of those four to determine the value of the other market. So we could use the euro, gold, oil, and the S&P to determine the valuation of the bond. The S&P 500 right now, and as has been the case really through much of last year and this year, is excessively overvalued based on its earnings generation. I know people in Monaco who are at very high level financial positions, and we're all waiting for a significant move down in the market. So equities right now, I look at them as dangerous. People say, what's the safe place to be? The old line is cash is king. Gold has gotten very high. It's a little overextended. The famous Richard Russell once said, there's never a bad time to buy gold. But I would wait to buy gold. I think being in cash now is smart. The dividend yield in the S&P 500, because the prices have gotten so high, is down to about 1%. You can get 4% without the risk in the US Treasury market. So why stay in the stock market? You risk losing your capital, you get no yield. But in the bond market, you know you get 4%, and when the instrument expires, you know you get your money back. I was diagnosed with lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. It was the Hodgkin's variety. And I went to Princess Grace and met Dr. Bruno Taillant, who's the head of hematology and oncology. And he said, your scans are not good. And he looked at me, and this is not funny, but it was funny. He says, 6 months. And I said, doctor, what do you mean 6 months? And he said, you die. And then he smiled and he said, but this is a very treatable cancer, we'll take care of you. So all during 2023, I went through sessions of chemotherapy. And by the end of 23, he said, the cancer is kaput, you've been cured. The medical staff, the doctors, the nurses, all the team at Princess Grace were absolutely magnificent. Everybody was nice, everybody was patient. The treatment was done such that I never really felt ill the whole time. I was tired a lot. When you get cancer, it's very scary to be told you have it. It's frightening. But they made me relax. I'm staying as fit as I can and as young as I can.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching NEWS.MC, your English rendezvous on Monaco Info. Discover more interviews and stories on our websites, NEWS.MC and MonacoInfo.com. This show was brought to you by Monaco Legend Properties.